Hey you guys, this is Guy Helmers, creator of Get Rich, and I'm going to show you how to draw Haze. You may have seen my How to Draw Wolfgang video already, and this is pretty well going to be exactly the same thing, except for the fine details of Haze. So what I'm going to start with is creating my Haze function, or doing my Haze function. What that does is it makes a character, in this case just labeled Haze, but I do this for pretty well every character, with a set of layers starting with skin at the bottom, followed by pants, then shirt, then hands, which is just a front layer of skin, then the detail, the face, and the face structure. Now, the face structure for me is on its way out because I usually do the facial structure in sketches. However, for this video, I'm going to be using that to do the sketch. So here we start, and we're going to just start with some rough, sketchy structural shapes. I always start with the head, and you want it to be round. Both Wolfgang and Haze's heads are round. Then from their neck, you just go for some swoopy body dimension kind of things. And from here, you basically get to explore all you want, or with, structures and shapes. I've got my feet here, and then I go for the leg arch, which means that his pants will be about here. For Haze, I draw his hoodie collar, I guess, and then his big puffy sleeves, and then that goes to his body, which is like this, and then his other puffy sleeves and some hands right there. So with that, you pretty well get the general idea. I can do the more specific details like his hair and his ears. And what I like to do is I like to put the angle of his face, because of course with this you know where he's looking, because you can always do stuff like, have him looking this way, having him look up, etc., etc., all from that basis of where the structure begins. So it's very important to have the head the way that you want it, more so than anything else. Now I'm going to just move this up so it's more centered. And then we'll start with, where I start with Haze is with the shirt, because it is one of the most prominent aspects of him. Alright, I'm going to switch my brush. Now the way that I illustrate all these characters after I use my little rough pencil is by using just the regular Photoshop brush, because it just makes such just smooth results. So here we start with his collar. We'll just go with it however. And there's a sleeve. There's his pants, or his shirt line, and then there's his other sleeve. Now I have a nice little tool where you can wand in the center, and it fills with just solid color. It's great for animation. And there you've got his shirt. Now I'm going to do his skin. This is where I start with most characters, but Haze it's easy with his coat, because his hoodie dissects basically everything else, so then it's the best to do it. Now, along with Wolfgang, Haze's ears follow the arch of his head, that base circle, but just his ears hang straight down from the outermost point of the circle, and swoop down behind his head. There has to be sort of somewhat of a circle, not like a pure circle, I guess, not like that. just enough to give it a little bit of roundness to his head. I'm going to do the same here. I've basically concluded, in contrast to back in the day, that his ears are almost always just behind his head. I used to have it that they would be both in front of his face, but it just makes his, his facial details really crowded and sort of stuffy. Now, you always start with his hair from the back. So in this case, his hair is moving towards the right, our visual right. And so you start from where the ear begins, and you just run along and you try and make little tight, little thrown circles. That's a little bit pushing it. And you always end with sort of a fat one at the end. That's of course his like bang almost. It's really hard to sort of explain his hair because at first I had no ability to do it and it was just luck. But now I sort of, you just get these just tight little thrown things. You definitely press down towards the peak of his thing to give it a nice round. Like here I didn't push nearly as much as the other three. And yeah, all you want for this last one is that rather than, poking out and coming in like that, it's sort of hits it intercepts his head before it starts pulling back all the way to, inward. And if I were being elitist, I would, I would deal with that, but I'm not going to. So then we can just click wand, and because I want to just get through this, I'm going to go through these, and I'm going to let that run for a bit. Going to click F2, getting a call in the middle of this recording. Well, I leave that for my answering machine, because that's what it's like to live in this new age world. Alright, so now we're going to get back to his pants. So you just need to follow this. I like to make a little bit of a loop where their ankles are, and another loop. Now, as you can see here, I'm already making adjustments to how I want it to be, just because that sketch is not meant to be the most comprehensive conclusion of the way that it's supposed to draw, but just to get the general, the shape of, the scene and stuff like that, because I also do the sketches with the backgrounds. In this case, I've got the background done, so it doesn't matter. Now, I usually don't have shoes in most of my shots, so I just add the layer below the pants for Hayes, because his shoes are actually shoes, unlike Wolfgang's boots. Now I learned the best way to do this is to use his sole color and follow just the underside of his shoe, and then come in with his primary shoe color and just overdraw it with just a little bit of the heel showing. And if you get a good feel for it, then just in a couple strokes you have the shoes done. Oh, and don't want to forget his little hands. I'm just not doing hands because those take, of course, a lot of detail to do. Try and get a little bit of knuckles there. And there you go. So then we'll head into the details. Doesn't really matter where you start, but I often start with his coat again, because it's that first starting one that basically derives everything else. You make the little loops for his hoodie cuff collar thing, because of course his hoodie hangs sort of behind him. And then do his body with the little round coat bulb of his, there you go. Do his pocket, do a little bendy there. Gonna do his little pull strings, and they always just have a little branch at the bottom. They start just below the collar, or the whatever, around his neck kind of thing area. Hayes has no detail on his pants because usually his coat hangs over top. He has no detail on his shoes unless they're of course overlapping each other. So then we go into the skin detail. You do little knuckles there, little knuckles there. Hayes does have a watch, but that's rarely visible. And then you just go with the curvature of his head. Follow that. If you want, you can put a little chin, just separation from his neck and his head. Depending on the angle of his face, sometimes you have to do that or whatnot to define his hair more prominently. But overall, that's Hayes' character details, and then we're going to go into his face. So I said in Wolfgang's video that he doesn't have the little animal cleft, but Hayes does, and this gives you a good point to you know, do his mouth whatever you want. I gave Wolfgang a smile. I'm giving Hayes sort of a Of course, here, if you're watching this for the first time, is where you can go and you can, you know, give him his, you know, really stark features and, you know, whatever. But of course, I'm not gonna be doing that for this tutorial because that's a face-by-face basis. And then, like I said with Wolfgang, is that when you, or I've determined through experimentation and whatnot, that their eyes pull the whole old Disney oval eyes shape. I feel that gives them a good range, and it definitely makes it so that when they're, you know, leering, they you know, their eyes really change in the, you know, the expression of what you're used to. Let's get back to, there we go, eraser that. Now Hayes does not have bags under his eyes. He has little dog eyebrow marks. Sometimes you can affix it with eyebrow lines, but usually if he's happy, they're high. If he's, you know, more serious, they're down, you know, like that. But when you do need to, you know, go for the really stark eyebrows, you have to do those lines. And then for Hayes, he's got irises and pupils. So there you go. It's way easier to draw the iris and then the pupil inside than the pupil and then trace around the pupil to make the iris. That took me many years to figure out. And in this case, I've noticed that his face is a little bit high, so then I would pull it down a little bit. And now, really sloppy, you've got Hayes. And like I showed in the other video, I would, if I were critiquing other people, you know, based off of just making sure it works, is I would say, you know, pull up the waistline a little bit. This wasn't as bad as Wolfgang's. Shrink the head just a little bit. I don't know why for these videos I made their heads so big. I would say, of course, clean up his eye lines. I would make his hairline smaller here because, of course, the curvature of his head goes along like that. So then all of this part here is making his head shape change, which makes him look different as a character. Because you want these little points to basically meet, you know, his actual headline, just to keep it tight and you know, accurate. I would adjust the shoulders here. I really sort of screwed him up there in that regard. He would come down like this, basically. You know, tidy this, make this a little bit better, fix the swoop a bit, adjust the leg thickness to be more similar fix the arch a little bit so it's not such a point. Of course, guys have packages to take care of there. And yeah, overall, that's how you draw haze. So I hope that this is a good little instructable for everybody on how to draw the two main characters of Get Rich. But I hope you now see by watching both how the workflow just relates to every character and every person and asset in the visuals, whatever it be it animation, be it comics. And all you have to do is just change the shapes and change the colors, and then try and adhere to sort of a set of sort of aesthetic choices, you know, like I said in Wolfgang's, just leaving it a little bit wobbly, not being super picky about how it looks, gives it a little bit of a charm as long as you keep it dialed in. And of course you notice that there's no outside lines, and that's because in this process it's so nice to just be able to basically sculpt the shapes of the characters, and then just put the detailing in as it goes. So anyways, with these two tutorials, I hope you enjoy character creation with the art style of Get Rich. Alright, see you guys.